Uhuru.
Yes,
Uhuru.
come on in. Come on in. It's Monday. You know what time it is.
One Africa Worldview time to
We
talk
are
about.
here. Come on in, like, share, subscribe. Tell
Yes.
your folks to come on in and join us because we got a show for you today.
Yes, we do. Episode 19 is about to be some hot fire. Some hot fire. We have an amazing guest lined up for you all. So much has happened, and I'm really excited to get into it. So yeah, come on in, comrades. Come on in. If you've been here before, let us know in the comments. If this is your first time, we love new listeners, old listeners too. But we're trying to put One Africa Worldview out there in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Come on in.
Come on in. You know we have a lot to talk about. And we got a guest for you today. Come on in.
Yeah, I already know y'all see the thumbnail, so you know who we're gonna talk about. You know who's about to be on, so you gotta stay tuned, for real. But
I see
yeah,
you. We see you coming on in. Tell your friends. We got one for you today. We are over here. It is Monday. It is time for One Africa Worldview Podcast. So let's get right into it.
all right, Uhuru, and welcome to episode 19 of the One Africa Worldview podcast. I am Solyana, one of your co-hosts, as well as the managing editor for the Burning Spear newspaper, the longest-running Black Power newspaper in the U.S. So, come on now.
Come on. I'm Dr. Mariah, promotions coordinator, y'all, for Black Power 96.3 FM radio, based out of St. Petersburg, Florida, but available now worldwide through the Black Power 96 mobile app. And our show airs on Black Power 96 radio every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Yes, that's right. And y'all already know we are dedicating this episode of the One Africa Worldview to heroic freedom fighter Comrade Assata Shakur, who actually just passed away a few days ago on September 25. And we call on all freedom-loving people to raise up Assata and to, teach the people about her significance in the struggle for African people. And this is what we aim to do with today's discussion.
Yeah, and who better to speak of her significance and that period of African resistance that Assata actually represents than Chairman Omali Yeshitela, y'all, leader and founder of the African People's Socialist Party, born from that same anti-colonial Black revolution of the 1960s. And we are so excited to have a chairman on our program today, the author of The Theory of African Internationalism. And that is really the worldview that we articulate each and every week on this show.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And we are honored to have our leadership on with us for the primary objective of the show. It's going to be his first time on the show, so I'm really excited about that. But before we invite him on, let's give our viewers some, background on who Comrade Assata is. While there may be a lot of us watching and listening that know about this really incredible revolutionary force from the Black Revolution of the 60s, the fact is that there are those of us who really have not had the benefit of this history, right? We've been force-fed Black petty bourgeois politicians as leadership, while it's our political prisoners and our martyrs that really deserve this recognition. So, let's talk about Comrade Assata. And before we do that, we'll first watch this clip of Assata from the documentary Eyes on the Rainbow, a film that premiered in 1997.
From slavery, the idea of political prisoners started. We were political prisoners brought here from Africa. We were political prisoners in the in order to keep colonialism fat, in order to keep the plantation owners that profited from our sweat and labors, we were kidnapped and brought here as prisoners, and our status hasn't changed, whether it's on the streets. We're prisoners of the ghettos, in Harlem. We're prisoners in small tenements. We're prisoners of urine-smelling hallways. And I mean, I've always been a prisoner. I've never been free in my life. I don't know what freedom means. Sitting.
Wow, yeah. Comrade Assata joined the Black Panther Party in the early 70s, y'all, a time where violent colonial political repression and persecution existed. And there was this nonstop war waged on the Black liberation organizations during that time, and just from the assassinations happening to even imprisonment. And anyone believed to be associated with any of these such forces were involved also. So in the March 1976 issue of The Burning Spear, it was reported that Assata Shakur, a courageous and skilled revolutionary, has defeated the state for the third consecutive time with her recent acquittal in the Brooklyn Supreme Court on charges of armed robbery and kidnapping. Shakur's revolutionary political activities in the Black Liberation Army have made her a target of the state. Her fourth trial has begun, and she faces 2 more indictments for her murder. One indictment stems from a May 1973 police attack on the New Jersey Turnpike, where the state troopers failed in their attempt to ambush her.
That's right. And in a February 1977 Spear article, when we told y'all this was the longest running Black Power newspaper, I mean, this is an example right here. But in that issue, it was reported that Assata was, quote, 3 times acquitted of charges of kidnapping, bank robbery, and murder, all of which were manufactured by the state of New York and the federal government. A 4th charge was dismissed, and Shakur is a political prisoner of the U.S. colonial government who is being persecuted for her belief that Africans should be a free and self-determining people. The Spear details in the same article the events of the New Jersey Turnpike, and the Spear reports the long ordeal began for Assata and 2 of her comrades, Zaid Shakur and Sundiata Akoli, then known as Clark Squire, on May 2, 1974, when they were stopped on the New Jersey Turnpike for a broken taillight by state troopers Warner Forster and James Harper. An alleged shootout occurred, leaving Zaid murdered by the troopers, Assata near death with 2 .357 Magnum bullet wounds in her back, Forster dead, Harper wounded, and Akoli in fight for his life. Following one of the largest manhunts in New Jersey history, Akoli was captured 2 days later. Both he and Shakur were incarcerated in the Middlesex County Jail, and after their capture, the U.S. colonialist media bombarded the public in order to justify the murder of Zaid and the legal lynching of Shakur, which was then to follow.
Wow. So, yeah, and the March 1977 issue of the Spear does detail reporting on Assata's case and calls for support. In an attempt to frighten and intimidate Assata's supporters, the state is photographing, fingerprinting, searching, confiscating belongings, and asking for identification of everyone who enters the courtroom. Only 14 supporters are allowed in at a time. There have also been demonstrations outside the courtroom while the trial is being held. The trial is expected to be a long one, and contributions are still desperately needed. In the April-May 1977 issue, the Spear reports that the conclusion of Assata's trial, despite overwhelming evidence of her innocence, Assata Shakur has been convicted by a North American court of killing a New Jersey state trooper and has been sentenced to life in prison. This is part of Assata's opening statement during her trial, which she is not allowed to read, that was published in the April 1977 issue of the Spear. This is what she said, y'all. I am without a doubt a political human being. I am without a doubt committed to struggling for Black liberation and concerned about ending the injustice and oppression that Black people suffer. I have been involved not only in struggling for decent living conditions for all people, I have been involved in the struggle for human rights all of my adult life. I became involved in the struggle for human rights because Black people are not free or equal in this country because of the poverty, indecent housing, massive unemployment, poor medical care, and inferior education in Black communities, because drugs have saturated our communities, preying on the disillusionment and frustration of our children.
Yeah, she could have been saying that today, and it still rang very true, very accurate, right? In the December 1979 issue, the Spear reports on, Assata's liberation and the National Hands-Off Assata campaign that was called by the African National Prison Organization, or ANPO, which was a mass organization of the African People's Socialist Party, right? So the Spear reports, Black Liberation Army captive Assata Shakur was liberated from a New Jersey prison November 2 in a bold and daring daylight prison break. According to the New York Times, 4 Black men and a white woman posing as visitors commandeered a prison van, seized 2 prison employees, and fled with a 32-year-old African freedom fighter. Assata was serving life plus 65 years for the frame-up charge of killing a New Jersey state trooper. It continues, immediately after learning of the escape, the African National Prison Organization, a newly formed mass organization with representation in 16 states, the District of Columbia, and 26 cities, stated its, quote, unconditional solidarity with Shakur's recent liberation and initiated a hands-off Assata campaign. A press statement released on November 4 stated that the African National Prison Organization is in total solidarity with the recent liberation of Assata Shakur from a New Jersey prison. It is our belief that Shakur was unjustly incarcerated by the U.S. in an attempt to smash the ever-growing struggle by Black people to be free. However, Assata's recent escape is proof positive of the ever-emerging determination of Black people to free all political prisoners and prisoners of war, as well as a manifestation of the collective will of Black people to be free. So the statement called for all AMPO chapters and other Black and freedom-loving peoples to immediately hold demonstrations, pickets, rallies, etc., at city halls, police departments, federal buildings, to show mass support for Shakur and demand that U.S. government keep its claws off Assata.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, the Burning Spear and the African People's Socialist Party, APSP, calls on all of our readers and supporters to join in the Hands Off Assata campaign. In addition to demonstrations, we call upon Black people to post signs stating that Assata Shakur is welcome here, and other acts of support and solidarity. As we said in a 1974 editorial in the Burning Spear entitled, Support the Black Liberation Army, Black people, especially African revolutionaries, cannot simply stand aside pontificating while members of the Black Liberation Army, who are fighting the same enemy we profess to recognize as our own, are being murdered in the streets. So throughout this country, are thrown into dungeons because of their resistance to this criminal imperialist country.
Yes, and I just want to mention too, these were excerpts from our our very own Burning Spear newspaper, right? Our since 1969, it's been in continuous print, and it was one of the really on the ground newspapers that was really covering this event in detail. And so, just wanted to shout out the long history of the Spear, of which we were just reading from. And so, I also want to say it has been really important for us as the African People's Socialist Party, the organization committed to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s, to have documented really and defined this anti-colonial narrative. And so to conclude this bit of our overview, let's watch this video of Chairman Omali Yeshitela speaking on the counter-insurgency and the victory of the Black liberation movement in freeing Assata.
Shortly after that, many of you know J. Edgar Hoover's program called COunter-INsurgency program that was designed to destroy the Black liberation movement. And it did so. So that by 1969, for all practical purposes, the back of the Black liberation movement had birth broken. Malcolm was killed in 65. Martin was killed in 68. And the Oakland, California, 16-year-old little Bobby Hutton was fired at with 1,000 rounds by 50 pigs who killed him dead right here in the city of Oakland. December 4th, 1969, the FBI, along with Chicago Police Department, raided the headquarters of the Black Panther Party, killing Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, whom they had drugged the night before to guarantee that they would not be able to defend themselves. Over 300 members of the Black Panther Party were arrested. More than 30 were killed. More than 30 Black Panther offices throughout this country were raided by FBI agents and local police departments. The head of the Black Liberation Movement was cut off, not only by killing Panthers, but there were hundreds of other smaller organizations throughout this country. Many of the victims of that oppression are still locked up. Right here in the Bay Area, Geronimo Pratt is in San Quentin. There are people like Sundiata Acoli locked down on the East Coast. And Assata Shakur is only free because the Black movement was capable of going into the prison in 1969 and taking her out of there. Our responsibility, sisters and brothers, is to overthrow this layer of Uncle-Tomism that has been imposed on our community subsequent to the defeat of the Black Revolution. You want to understand what's happening, you have to remember that Jesse Jackson was alive in 1968. But when Black people wanted to solve a problem in 1968, we weren't talking to any preachers about the solution to the problem. We were talking to the Black Panther Party and other revolutionary organizations similar to them. Sisters and brothers, I'm going to end my presentation. The point that must be made is that Black people and our allies, revolutionary people, must complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. Not only do we have a responsibility to do this for ourselves, for our children, and for our future, but by virtue of being born and living in the belly of an imperialist empire, we have this responsibility to the fighting peoples of the world who are being oppressed and threatened every day with destruction by U.S. imperialism, by the United States government, which is the foulest government on the planet Earth that is sowing destruction everywhere, everywhere. We owe it to the...
Wow. Yeah, Uhuru, we salute that video presentation, y'all. And that for our listeners there, that was a presentation, a video we're watching here from the chairman. And I just have to say, it's time now to hear from him live. We're going to get right into our primary objective, y'all, this week with our very special guest for the first time here on One Africa Worldview, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, leader of the Worldwide African Revolution, y'all, founder of the African People's Socialist Party and the African Socialist International. He's the author of the Theory of African Internationalism, founder of the Burning Spear newspaper, y'all, and an organizer from the period of the Black Power movement of the 1960s. Uhuru, Chairman, thank you for being on with us, and we are so extremely honored to have you.
Uhuru, thank you, comrade. And I just want to express my appreciation for being able to be here with you. Sister Mariah, it's something to get used to seeing you not as an animated character as you were during the trial. And Comrade Solyana, splendid. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Uhuru, of course, thank you so much for joining us, Chairman. Yeah, this is your first appearance on One Africa Worldview, and we're just really glad to have you on. really talk about the history of Assata, your own history with Assata, and the, our movement's, solidarity with her. And so before we get into our first question for you, Chairman, I just wanted to sort of contextualize, what the frame up and the incarceration of Assata Shakur was, right? It was part of the U.S. government's counter-insurgency program of the 1960s that we now refer to as COINTELPRO. The government's program to crush the African liberation movement is bigger than that, though it's bigger than COINTELPRO and sort of continues today. But for our viewers who may not be familiar, we have here some of the stated objectives of COINTELPRO, right? It was issued by the FBI under Director J. Edgar Hoover back in 1967. And Hoover himself wrote, quote, "The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalist hate-type organizations and groups, their leadership, spokesmen, membership, and supporters. Efforts of the various groups to consolidate their forces or recruit new or youthful adherents must be frustrated." So that's what he wrote. And the program targeted several groups, including the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, of which you yourself, Chairman, was a member, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Revolutionary Action Movement, Deacons for Defense and Justice, Congress of Racial Equality, and the Nation of Islam. So a lot of organizations, were targeted under this. And after King's assassination in April of 1968, the FBI, decided that the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was no longer a primary concern, and the primary target ended up being the Black Panther Party. At the same time, the Bureau restated its goals for the Black Nationalist Counterintelligence Program, right? And now they had these 4 objectives. One was the prevention of a coalition of Black nationalist groups. The second one was the prevention of the rise of a messiah who might be able to unify or electrify the movement. And the third one was to prevent violence on the part of Black nationalist groups. And the last one, to prevent militant Black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to responsible Negro groups, to the white community, to liberals who may possess vestiges of sympathy for them. So this was the sort of context that, informed this counterintelligence program. And so I'll hand it to Mariah for our first question.
Yeah. So as far as that, Chairman, when it comes to those objectives, Chairman, you and the African People's Socialist Party, since its founding back in 1972, have worked hard to expose the U.S. government's military defeat of the Black Revolution. So when others have argued that the Black Power movement has ended because of stuff like these goals, that like the Civil Rights Bill and affirmative action and stuff like that. So why is it important for people to understand what actually happened, and how have you gone about rebuilding the African anti-colonial struggle?
Well, I want to thank you so much for the question. One reason, some of the things that we're talking about to now, as you know, up to are occurring even now. Some of the things that we talk about that you that was laid out in what was characterized as this COINTELPRO document. We see that happening today. We've just saw coming from the White House some security document from the President of the United States that laid out some of the same basic stuff that you find in that COINTELPRO document. A thing that was different then, I mean, we knew we were being hit all around this country. And there were radicals and liberals who wanted to characterize us as being somebody who they were just being paranoid, that it would be later that we would actually see the evidence of the existence of what they characterized as the COINTELPRO process. And this project, again, as we said, was something that was led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but it was only one. And the CIA was involved in these attacks, despite the fact that the CIA, they had something called chaos. The fact that the CIA was supposedly not supposed to operate within the borders of the United States. There were different military intelligence organizations that were attacking our movement as well. So I think it's worth noting, going back to the COINTELPRO document. It called for the prevention of a coalition of Black nationalist groups. There's nothing illegal about a coalition of Black nationalist groups. So why would the federal government have this secret political organization preventing this coalition, prevent the rise of a messiah who might be able to unify and electrify the movement? What's illegal about that they're targeting?
Right.
Prevent violence on the part of Black nationalist groups. When they talk about preventing violence, that's an incendiary statement that they're sending to all of these agents wherever they're located throughout this country, that somehow it's based on a presumption that there is some violence someplace. They're not saying arrest people who are violent. They're not saying stop people when they're violent. Prevent violence. So doing things to this group that you've already identified just involved in trying to unify Black people and fight and win our freedom and prevent militant Black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to responsible Negro groups, to the white community, to liberals who may possess vestiges of sympathy for them. So the thing is that they had, this was a real war that they had initiated against a sector of our community, of our movement. And when I say this, it should be understood that what they've characterized as Black nationalist hate groups were not the only forces that were operating within this country. What had transpired was that the movement had gone beyond the limitations of civil rights and we shall overcome, and had begun to address the question of colonialism. This is what the Black Panther Party was talking about. This is what Malcolm X had been talking about, colonialism. This was the thing that was grabbing the imagination of all the people around, most of us. But these organizations and persons who I mentioned were also in struggle within our own communities. So there were liberal Negro groups who were opposed to Malcolm and his message, who were opposed to the Panthers, who were opposed to the struggle against colonialism, and who wanted everything to be just this question of racism, which is something that you find telling people they should be trying to join the system as opposed to finding yourself liberated from the system. And in joining the system and fighting for that even, you strengthen the oppressors' grip on you. So when they did this attack on us, on the one hand, this physical assault, they were given ideological support, political support to the other philosophy, the other politics that existed inside our community that would have African people embrace the system, etc. So this is something that I think that doesn't get talked about enough, and I think is a critical question because in every instance, you can go back to Marcus Garvey, you see the NAACP, W.E. Du Bois, you see all of these folks, so-called Black socialists, they organized against Garvey, who was talking about Africa for Africans, having our own government, having our own capacity, who got steamship lines, who created factories for African people, etc. You had the NAACP that even today brags about being the oldest Black movement and organization in this country, but it has never done anything in terms of economic development. It doesn't even claim to own a barbecue stand. And the problem is because they see the solution inside the system, integrating into the system as opposed to creating for ourselves. And so this is one of the reasons that this is such an important issue, the attack on Assata, the attack on the Black Revolution of the 1960s, because this was a do for self. This was a program that spoke to the liberation of African people and to us becoming a self-governing people. And this disconnect contributes, as you know, to even today seeing posters or other kinds of paraphernalia that would have on them sometimes pictures like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and then Barack Obama, as though you're looking at a continuation of the same process. But by the time you get to Obama, what you're looking at, Obama is not a part of that. Obama was an attack on that. And that's the thing that most people don't necessarily grasp. And so this was a very important thing that they did to us. And one of the things that's made the African People's Socialist Party such a significant part of this movement over the last 60 or more years. Well, the party over the last 54 years or so.
No, thank you so much, Chairman. I really appreciate you just sort of diving deeply into, exactly what this counterintelligence program was attacking, right? It wasn't attacking anyone that, like you said, was trying to, do anything within the system. What really became, what posed as a threat to this, U.S. colonial system was the fact of African self-determination, right? That was what African people were trying to do, and what the counterintelligence program was trying to stop, right? Because, like you said, there's nothing illegal about coalition building. There's nothing illegal about, the First Amendment. One of their rights is the right to assembly.
Yeah.
Right. And so I appreciate you just delineating that and explaining that. And I, want to mention too that, we saw, to sort of bring it back to Assata, we saw evidence of, the party's political influence in some of the statements that Assata herself made. Right. We have an image of the typed statement that was sent by Sister Assata to the United Nations Human Rights Campaign back on November 5th, 1979. Which was only 3 days after she was liberated from that prison in New Jersey. And she begins that statement by saying Uhuru, right? Freedom was on her mind when she was sending that statement. So that just also shows, again, the impact of the party in this work. And I just also want to hand it off to Mariah, because, talking about the COINTELPRO and just insurgency when it comes to the way the Black people have, existed here, your own life is a testament to that. The party is a testament to that. So, Mariah, take us through that.
Yeah, just how you said Uhuru and that attack there. And Chairman, yourself, you have been repeatedly attacked when it comes to just the U.S. government over and over the course of your political life. And just looking at some of that, we know that you were sentenced to 5 years in prison for tearing down an anti-African mural over in St. Petersburg, Florida, at the city hall there, and served several of these in prison in Florida. And then you've been the target of attempted shooting assassinations, the first in San Francisco, actually, in 1978. Your home over in Oakland was firebombed in 1980s. In 1996, you were in the building when over 300 U.S. military forces actually surrounded and attacked the place. And that was the Uhuru House Black Community Center in St. Petersburg, Florida, where a legal meeting was taking place to discuss appropriate response to the grand jury's refusal to indict the cop that actually shot the 18-year-old unarmed motorist Tyrone Lewis there. So, and then most recently, we know that the feds raided your home and 6 other Uhuru Movement homes and offices, and they spent tens of millions of dollars in this huge failed attempt to lock you up for 15 years on these bogus charges, and you beat them and continue to organize for African unity, Chairman, and just liberation today. And we have to ask, how the hell did you survive all that?
I think that I've understood for a long time. I think you do too. I think your presence here represents recognition of a responsibility that we have to our people. And I have met and known people, some of whom were in the movement, some of whom were well known in the 1960s, who after a period of time claimed that they had to retire because they were burned out or something to that effect. And I've always found that difficult to understand. I know what it is to get tired, but I think that the reason that people could get burned out, as they characterize it, is because they couldn't see the future. And they suffered serious ideological deficits they did not have a developed theory that would help them know that victory was really on the horizon, even if it was not happening today, even if people went to jail, and we did go to jail. As you mentioned, I was in and out of jail so often that I sometimes would have to read the newspaper to discover where I was. There was Assata. There were so many people. In fact, there was a time early on in my own history with SNCC when we used to brag about, it was a badge of honor about the number of times you had gone to jail. Of course, we got over that eventually and decided that we didn't want to do that anymore, which is one of the things that got Assata out of that prison. The thing that kept us going was our understanding of our obligation. It's bigger than us. There have been times when I have been tired. But the thing is that I made a promise to the people and my involvement in the party. The work that we do is a promise to African people. We've told African people we're going to be here, that this is what we should be struggling for. And it's hard to quit under those kinds of circumstances. So, and then I gained more and more ideological clarity over the years, helping to understand that this thing that we were looking at is transitory. It's not a permanent. It doesn't have to be a permanent situation. And if you want it to not be permanent, then you change it. And it's not enough just to wish it. We have to get involved in changing it, and that's possible to change it. We come to understand that humans created the social system and the processes that lock us into this oppression and exploitation. If humans created it, then humans can change it. And that's the thing that we became clear on. We refuse to attribute to our oppressors, to white people, some supernatural power that they have that made them invincible. That what they have put out in the world was something that could not be challenged or changed, and we had a responsibility to do that. And so, I mean, I guess that's the best I can do in terms of trying to offer an explanation for what kept me involved in this. I would say one other thing, that I grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida, as may not be Florida for a long time. For a lot of people, didn't appear to be the South. They think of Florida hurricanes and alligators and beaches, etc. But Florida was brutal, and it was perhaps more brutal than many places that were renowned for their brutality against African people. Partially because it was ignored in some ways, except King, when he came to St. Augustine. I don't remember the exact year, but he failed in St. Augustine. He ran into such a brutal response to the presence that he failed. But I grew up there, and I grew up watching poor Africans, and we were not wealthy, but my mother and my father were both employed, and in fact, my mother owned a couple of beauty parlors, and so we grew up there, and my grandmother would give me political education on a regular basis. I didn't know it was political education at the time because it was Bible stories, and of people who were doing heroic things, Samson and Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers for the many colored coats that he had and things like that. And I was influenced when I saw poor African children who were left at home alone because their mothers, and I would see their mothers in the mornings, standing on the corner in the neighborhood, waiting in their little white uniforms, white dresses, waiting for some white person to come pick them up and then take them to their homes to take care of their children, while there was nobody to take care of our children. This mother left her own children, snot-nosed and barefooted, and etc. And so early on, I began to see myself in those children, and I can't give an explanation for that except when I looked at them, I could see myself in those children, and I've been fighting that forever. And anybody who's ever seen me around children know what I'm talking about in terms of how that has touched me so very much. So that's part of what propels me forward in terms of this movement.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Chairman, for sharing that with us. And, a lot of what you're saying reminds me of, why we say in the movement, liberation in our lifetime, right? We have to be able to visualize the kind of world we want to build and the work that we're doing now to reinvigorate us. Like you said, you get tired, but, the system that we're trying to, take down, and the system that we're, in turn are trying to build, is something that we need to understand is man-made, right? It's not this immutable fact that cannot be resolved, right? It can't be changed. It's man-made. And so I just appreciate you, bringing that up for me. And you've already touched.
I'm glad you raised the question, the system we're trying to build, because another problem is that some people can only view tearing it down,
right?
But we are constructing the future. That's the thing that really helps to propel us well. And we know that this future is possible. And one of the reasons it's possible is because we're doing it. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that actually leads me, to the next question. You said that the primary reason that the feds came after you and the Uhuru Movement with the, 2022 raise, the 2023 indictment, the 2024 trial, was because of the community building work that you lead. You said in a recent presentation to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement that, quote, freedom is not something you get on one day. We begin the process of constructing freedom. We construct our way out of this enslavement. We do that ourselves. And the Uhuru Movement has worked to, construct African freedom, right, throughout its existence. And, currently that work is focused with the Black Power Blueprint, sort of constructing the ability for the, African community to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. So, just based off of what we just talked about, do you want to talk a little bit about, the significance of what the Black Power Blueprint is doing right now?
I think that's important because we call it, an anti-colonial project, and that's exactly what it is. And it's something that's obvious, like in St. Louis, but there's evidence of it in St. Petersburg, Florida. There's evidence of it in various provinces in South Africa. You will see us doing more or less the same thing, not relying on the state to solve the problems, but bringing the people together to solve our own problems through constructing a capacity for self-government. We call it dual power, dual and contending power, not to be confused with something that we used to see, especially in the 70s and later, of they call it alternative institutions, where people would build their schools and things like that, and to exist inside the system and cost a lot of money for people to participate. Our objective is not to just exist side by side with these institutions, but to contend with the ability of these entities to govern us, to take care of our lives. That's why over our lives. That's why after the murder of Mike Brown here in Ferguson, suburb of St. Louis, and the refusal of the prosecutor to get this person indicted, to go for an indictment, we organized the people to have our own grand jury. And the people heard all the evidence that the jury brought together by the government here. We had the people examine the same evidence and came to a different conclusion of indicting the murderer of Mike Brown. And we've done these kinds of things over and over in various places. The thing is to help people come to recognize that we can be self-governing. We can determine our own future on our own if, in fact, there was not this hostile, a foreign, an alien entity that kept us from being able to express and exercise our will. So that's just been fundamentally important. So we've done that here in St. Louis. We've created all kinds of institutions. In the process, we've just finished a magnificent job under the leadership of Comrade Omali Yeshitela. We've created the whole Black Power blueprint in St. Louis. And most of the other places that we're talking about is under the leadership of Omali Yeshitela. And we've just, after 9 months, won, at least temporarily, the right to open a bakery in the community here in St. Louis that they call a food desert. It took 9 months of struggle just to get a permit to open that bakery, where restaurants had existed before. So this is really important. We create a basketball court in a community that you see in every African community throughout the United States, where the children are playing basketball in the middle of the streets with makeshift hoops and stuff like that. We built a $160,000 first-rate basketball court for the people in the community here in St. Louis. So we assume the responsibility of governing and of government. Right there, we've influenced the development of a radio station right there where in St. Petersburg, Florida. We've influenced the development of a radio station for St. Louis that should be functioning within the next year or so. I mean, we've got it. We've got the site. We've got the building. We've got almost everything. We've got the talent to make it happen, et cetera. So this is assuming responsibility for ourselves. This is agency. This is something that our oppressors do not want us to achieve. Agency, the capacity to be self-governing, self-reliant.
Wow. Thank you so much for explaining that. And like you said, we can't not say enough on that self-reliance and that owning that agency and doing it for ourselves. And just looking to that, you want to kind of go back earlier in the conversation. You mentioned that on last Thursday, that the September the 25th, that the same day that Assata died, that the U.S. White House issued what they call this national security presidential memo. And it was directed to the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Treasury, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security there. And the subject of the memo is countering terrorism and organized political violence. So you warned, Chairman, over and over that this is a very serious memo that all anti-colonial organizers should really be alerted to right now. So, and we have it here for our viewers that are able to see on the screen here. And we really want to ask you, Chairman, what does this mean for the movement?
Well, I think what it does to the movement, first of all, Trump and no such memo was made public when they attacked us on July 29, 2022. And they used some of the same language in the indictment that's used in this document here. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that and this is not just for the movement as such. This is an assault on basic fundamental presumptions of rights that African people have. We know these rights have not existed. We know the Constitution was not even ratified until while we were enslaved. When it was ratified in 1791. So, this is a real, kind of contradiction. So now we have all of this stuff coming from the White House. And so how we are treating this is, first of all, we have to educate the people. And we are looking at doing forums and webinars and even this discussion that we're having now to help the people to understand what's going on, to understand this assault that's being made, public assault on the rights of the people. And this is different from the COINTELPRO documents in the sense that COINTELPRO was secret. and there was a presumption of illegality of what the FBI was doing at that time. This is not secret. This is something that's coming from the government and telling the whole world. And what it does is challenges the legitimacy or the legality of anything that's not white and Christian and male. And it even challenges anything that violates the traditional American family. It goes, so it attacks all kinds of rights that people thought they have. But I also want to say that, so we want to educate people around that. There's a lot of work we're going to do. We're going to be doing Know Your Rights cards and forums and things like that, educating people right here in the community so that the people will have the ability to fight back. And the thing is that with the difference in this and the 1960s is, again, is public. And it moves off the presumption that they can win the majority, a whole bunch of white people, to unity with what they're doing. And so it fosters a kind of mob mentality, the kind of mob mentality we saw with these settlers, white settlers marching through the streets. You shall not replace us, kind of politic with torches and things like that. But the thing is that we have the party and our movement, and we're on the ground throughout this country, and they do not have the consolidated white world that they think they have, partially because we have white people, settlers who work under our leadership in 130 cities. And they are doing anti-colonial work in all of those places. And I think that it should also be understood that the Trump assault included, well, let me jump from that. I'm looking at the time thing now. There's a journal called Foreign Affairs. It's a journal of the thinking representatives of the ruling class created by the Rockefellers some years ago, and entity that they call the Trilateral Committee. And in January 2024, it published an article by a man named Robert A. Pape, who the article was entitled Our Own Worst Enemies. It talks about the increasing political violence that's happening in this country. This was in 2024. This is before Charlie Kirk. And it also talked about how, and it gave some examples of this violence that they're talking about. They don't mention any of the violence that's been initiated against African people, but they talk about how over this, we've seen this rapid kind of development of political violence that included January 6th, the attack on the White House, and his explanation for much of this. And he talks about how millions of Democrat, Republicans, and independents believe that political violence is acceptable. Many of them hail from the middle and upper class with nice homes and college education. The country's fight is over its national identity, but it has multiple dimensions. And the most serious is demographic change. In 1990, 76% of the US population identified as white. In 2023, the US Census Bureau put that figure at a little over 58%. By 2035, the share is set to fall to 54%. A decade later, it will dip below 50%. These changes have led to rising anger among conservatives, et cetera, et cetera. But if you remember, the United States is a settler colony, like Israel is a settler colony. That's the reason that Israel refuses to allow the Palestinians who they've kicked out of the country to return, because the settlers then become a minority, and they don't want to be a minority. It's a settler colony. They're illegitimate, and the return of the people helps to bring that into bold relief. That's why you have troops at the southern border to keep the Mexicans from coming back to their land, their territories. I mean, Texas, Utah, California, Colorado, et cetera, et cetera. That's stolen most recently. And the indigenous people are in concentration camps right now in this country. And it's a matter of it's one of the reasons that you have a situation with the massive incarceration of African people. You have a situation where they predict that something like 1 out of 3 of every African man between the ages of 18 and 35 or something like that is going to be in prison. These are childbearing ages that we are talking about. It's a form of birth control that they're imposing on our community, as well as obvious kind of repression and things like that. This is why even the white women who thought they were gaining stuff because they can now join the cops who are killing us in our communities and join the military, who are bombing people all around the world. And you see this attack that's being made even on women's rights. So because they want the white women to stay home and make babies, etc. Because they're concerned, this is all over the world. They're concerned about white women not producing enough children just to maintain the population that they have right now. So this influences and informs policies. This creates and foments violence about settlers, etc. And the fact is, this journal that I'm talking about, it mentions the fact that much of the violence is due, in fact, to the people experiencing a system that's broken, that's corrupt, etc. That's what Trump ran for office on, it being a broken system, being corrupt. Bernie Sanders ran for office. They were the most dynamic candidates in the 2016 elections. And people rushed to that because they didn't have us to rush to. This is why your work is so important. This is why we have to reach the people and help inform the people and bring them into political life on our own terms, as opposed to having them believe that they have to be either a Trumper or they have to be a Walmart socialist like Bernie Sanders. Uhuru.
Thank you so much for that, Chairman. I really appreciate you putting into, raising the question of settler colonialism and showing really how that governs the way that the state moves, how it's, literally, the policies that the state undertakes, the sort of violences that it imposes on, African people here, African people there, indigenous people here, Palestinian, like this, settler colonialism is really, what's governing all of these different things that African people have to contend with. And I just appreciate you raising that and raising up the work of the Burning Spear media, and how it really is important for us to put that out there and put the Uhuru Movement out there, because people do have a choice, right? They don't have to be, like you said, Walmart socialists or leftists. I don't know how you termed it, but yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And just before we wrap up the show, I want to mention that looking forward, we in about a month we have the November 1st, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace and Reparations, the annual Black People's March on the White House that it is organizing. And then later that same week, actually, on Thursday, November 6th, lawyers for Black Power 96 Radio will present oral arguments in federal court in Jacksonville, Florida, calling for the 11th Circuit to overturn the Tampa Judge Barber's decision to dismiss the station's case against Pinellas County for violation for of the station's First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and association, and also for racially discriminating against the station by giving all the federal ARPA funds to white groups in the county. And so, BP 96, Black Power 96 Radio, on which this show also airs, is a project of the African People's Education and Defense Fund, right? It's one of the many ways that we put the Uhuru Movement out there. It, broadcasts on 96.3 on the FM dial, serving the Black community of South St. Pete, Florida, as well as the worldwide African community through our mobile app now. And so, like I mentioned, One Africa Worldview airs on that, along with local volunteer produced shows and a lot of programs that's distributed by the Pacific Radio Network, of which BP 96 is an affiliate. And so the station is calling for the public to, attend that hearing in Jacksonville to, show support for independent Black community media and our rights to freedom of speech and association. And I know, Chairman, you're familiar with this case. You're familiar yourself experiencing what it is to have to defend your First Amendment rights. And I just want to, ask you before we wrap up, what should people know about this march that's taking place, and also about the significance of this First Amendment right case that BP 96 is fighting?
But they're connected. I mean, I think it's so important for people to come to Washington, D.C. I mean, Washington, D.C., that's now occupied with National Guard troops, our African community. They're talking about sending National Guard troops to Chicago. They're talking about sending National Guard troops to Memphis and possibly to St. Louis. They're talking about building a cop city right here in St. Louis. Africans are on our own. And we need to recognize that. We need to try to do everything we can to mobilize, to express our own objectives, our own programs, our own aspirations for freedom, for liberation, for self-governing, etc. So it's going to be really important. Let's bring Africans into Washington, D.C. Let's give anybody, the interlopers, need to be able to see massive amount of Africans who are there talking about freedom. And I think that it helps to raise the contradiction too. On the one hand, African people are marching, talking about freedom and having a rally about freedom. On the other hand, you got National Guards all over the place that makes the point more blatantly than anything that anybody will be able to say otherwise. So everybody should come out, and this contributes to agency of African people. So come and do that. And you can go to blackisbackcoalition.org to get more information about that. And I want to see you there. I'll see you there. I'll be there. So I'm hoping everybody, all of our listeners and viewers will also be there. Thank you so much.
Uhuru, yes, definitely. I'll definitely be out there. Washington, D.C. is in my backyard. So I will see.
That's right.
Yeah. So yes, that is it for today's show. Chairman, thank you so much once again for joining us. We really do appreciate you being on the show with us today, talking about, the significance of Assata Shakur, talking about the significance of the work that we're, doing, how, the work needs to continue regardless of, what our capacities may look like, and, just putting all of that into context and helping us understand that liberation in our lifetime is possible, right, is achievable. So that's thank you so much, Chairman Uhuru.
Thank you, Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru. Yes, and I want to say thank you, everyone, our viewers, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get notifications for when we're live. We stream on the Burning Spirit TV YouTube. We are on the Burning Spirit Media Rumble, and now on Black Car 96.3 FM, as you all know, that we just talked about. Tap in. It's based in St. Pete, Florida, but you can find it anywhere that you are located on the Black Car 96 FM app. So, with that, until next week, One Africa,
One Nation.
Uhuru.